Hi, welcome to the video Spring Boot REST API Crud with HATEOAS. I am Nam Haming from CodeJava.net. In this video, I'd like to share with you how to develop REST APIs that follow HATEOAS principle with Spring Boot. In details, you'll learn how to code RESTful web services with Spring Boot, how to build REST APIs for CRUD operations such as create, retrieve, update, and delete. Understand Hypermedia as the engine of application state or HATEOAS, and how to add links to REST APIs using Spring HATEOAS API. And in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the development of a Java project based on the following technologies: Spring Boot that simplifies the development of Spring-based application, Spring Data JPA that simplifies the coding of data access layer, Spring Web that simplifies the coding of RESTful web services, Spring HATEOAS that eases the creation of links for REST APIs, and H2 in-memory database. And I'm using the following software programs: Java Development Kit. I recommend you to use Java version 11 or newer, Spring Tool Suite IDE, Crud, and Postman for testing REST APIs. In details, you will learn how to develop the following REST APIs for account management or account APIs: get all account information, get information of a specific account, add an account information, update an existing account, deposit an amount to an account, withdraw an amount from an account, delete a specific account, and these are the API endpoint URIs. You see, each API is identified by a unique URI like this, you see. Let's look at a sample data returned by the API identified by the URI /API/accounts/1, meaning that it returns the information of the account ID1. So in the data, besides the information of the account such as ID, account number, balance, it also includes some links with the relations such as self, deposits, withdrawals, collection. So REST clients can follow these links in order to perform actions related on the data. So this is the concept of HATEOAS in REST APIs. Make sense? Okay, this is Spring Tools with IDE. Let's create a new Spring Starter project. Go to menu File, New Spring Starter project. Okay, and name the project as Account API. And the project type is Maven, Java version 11. Language Java. Group ID net.codejava.account. Package name net.codejava.account. Description: develop REST APIs with HATEOAS. Click next. And for the dependencies, if you don't see the frequently used dependencies here, you can type a keyword here. Note that the Spring Boot version is 2.7.1. We need to use Spring Web. We need to use Spring Data JPA. We need to use Spring HATEOAS, and we need to use H2 database. And we'll also need to use DevTools, Spring Boot DevTools for automatic restart and reload whenever we make changes to the code. Okay, click Finish. And it is creating the Spring Boot project with Maven. You see the Maven project file pom.xml here. Okay, you see the dependencies here. Spring Boot start Data JPA, HATEOAS, Web Dev Tools, H2 database, starter test, and Java version 11. Okay, and you see the project has been created completely here. You see the main class for Spring Boot application with the annotation Spring Boot application here. Okay. All right. Come back to the IDE and let's create the account class. Account that represents the information of an account, and we use the annotation entity to indicate that this Java class maps to a table in the database, and we use the table annotation and specify the table name is accounts, and we have the fields ID and account number and balance, and generate getters and setters for these fields. Select all, generate. Okay, and then we use the annotation ID and generated value strategy generation type identity to indicate that the ID field is mapping to the primary column in the database, and its values are automatically generated by the database. And we need to use this column annotation for the account number field. We specify the maximum length is about 20 characters, and nullable equal false, and unique equal true. Okay, very simple. And then we code the account repository interface. Account repository and extends JPA repository, which the entity type is account and type of the ID is integer. Okay, and we should code a JPA test class to test the account repository. Delete this generated test class, delete, and new class account repository test, and we use the annotation Data JPA test, and we auto wire account repository report. In the first test method, we test adding an account, public void test add account, create a new account object. We update the account entity class, generate constructor using fields, account number, and balance. And we also need to have a no argument constructor like this. Okay, account number we pass the account number here and balance 100, and then we call repo save account, and it returns an account object saved account, and we assert that saved account is not null, and then we also assert that saved account get ID is greater than 0. Okay, and run this test method. So it is a very simple JUnit test. You should write JUnit test to ensure that the code in the repository layer is working properly before coding higher layer such as service layer or controller layer. You see, the test has been successful, and you can see in the control view here, it creates the table accounts and then insert into accounts, and then it drops the table because by default Spring Data JPA test use the it uses in-memory H2 database and roll back any changes to the database after the test finishes. Make sense? Next, let's code the update balance method in the account repository interface and write a couple of unit tests for this method. So we update the account repository interface, define a custom method here, public void update balance. Parameters are amount and account ID, and we use a custom query. The query is update account A, set A dot balance equal A dot balance plus the value of the first parameter, and where A dot ID equal to the value of the second parameter in the method. And because this is an update query, so we need to use the modifying annotation. Okay, and then we write a unit test method. Test public void test deposit amount. First, we need to add an account with the initial balance is 100, and then we deposit 50, an amount 50. So we call repo update balance 50, and ID is saved account get ID. And to assert this test, we get the account object back, get file by ID, saved account get ID, not get updated account, and we assert that updated account get balance is equal to the value 100 and minus 1 equals 50. Okay, and run this test deposit amount. You see, we got the test failed. Expected 50 but was 100. You can see it's because Spring Data JPA test automatically wrote back transaction for the test here. So we should use the rollback annotation for here. And sorry, this is deposit, so the balance should be increased. It should be 150. After adding 50, it should be 150 here. And run the test again. Okay, you see the test is still failing because expected 150 but was 100. All right, let me check the query. Update account set balance plus one account repository test. Update balance 50 account ID. I think it's no problem at all because I think it's because we used H2 in memory database, so the test, you see the test didn't get the account by ID. You see, we don't see the select statement to get the account by ID, so the balance is always 100. At least we are sure that the query in the repository interface is working properly. That's the unit test failed. Okay, no problem. And next, let's implement the business logic in the account service class for the account management, such as a list or get, save, delete, deposit, withdraw. These methods will be used by the account API class. Okay, so we update the account service class. We need to code the account service class. Account service use the service annotation. And here we have a field of type account repository report. And we inject the instance of account repository via constructor. So generate constructor using fields here. Okay, you see. And the first business method that returns a list of account objects. So the method should be public list account list all and return repo file all. And the second method for getting a specific account by ID, public account get integer ID, and we return repo file by ID get. And the next method is for saving, updating an account object, public account save account, and simply return repo save account. So with the help of Spring Data JPA, the code in the service layer is very simple. And the next method is for depositing an amount to a specific account deposit with parameters amount and ID. So we call repo update balance amount ID, and we return repo file by id dot get, and the next method for withdrawing an amount from a specific account. The method should be withdraw. Here we negate the amount number, so the account balance will be decreased with the withdrawal operation. Make sense? Okay, and the last method is for deleting an account. Delete by id, integer id, repo delete by id. Okay, so that's the code for the account service class. Very simple, right? And we also need to use the transaction annotation. Because we call the method update balance that executes an update query update here. So in the service class, we need to use the transaction annotation like this. Okay, now we come to code the first REST API for the first retrieve operation, list all accounts. The request URI or the API endpoint URI should be /API/accounts, and the purpose of this API is to retrieve information of all accounts. And the HTTP request method should be get. The response status code should be 200 OK if response contains data, or 204 no content if the response contains no data. And the response body should include a JSON document represents information of all accounts. And here's a sample data returned from the list or retrieve operation. For now, we just implement the code to return the data for each account information like this, and later we will add the HATEOAS links into the data like this. Later, links will be added later. Okay, come back to the project, and we code Spring REST controller class, new class account API, and we use the REST controller annotation to expose RESTful web services to client, and we use the request mapping to specify the base URI is /API/accounts. And we need to have a reference of account service here, service, and we inject an instance via constructor. Okay, generate. Okay, and the first API we use the get mapping public list account list all. And for now we just return service list all. Okay, and then start the Spring Boot project. Right click start here. Okay, you see our Spring Boot application has started successfully. It is listening on port number 8080 with the context path is empty. Okay, so for early testing, I use command line, use the curl command. So open a new command prompt and type curl localhost port number 8080/API/accounts. And you see it returns an empty, meaning that no data. But as per the requirement, we should return the status 204 no content if the response contains no data. So we need to update the code here. Okay, so here update the code response entity of Thai list account. This should be a list accounts, and we check if list accounts is empty. Then we return a response entity, no content. Response entity, no content, build. Otherwise, we return the data, which is a list of accounts here. So we return new response entity. The data is list accounts, and the HTTP status is okay. Okay, and test again. Okay, try the command again, and you see nothing printed. So we should use the dash v flag to see the verbose output, and you see here the request get /API/accounts localhost, and the response is the status code is 204, meaning that no content. Correct, right? That means no data for the API. Okay, so far so good. Now let's code a new class that initialize some sample data for the database. So we code a new class here, database loader, and we use the configuration annotation for this class, and we have the reference of account repository here, report, and we inject an instance via constructor. Okay, here, and we declare a bin, a Spring Bean of type command line runner. So the code in this method will be executed after application has started. So we return a lambda expression here. We add 3 account objects to the database. Proceed 3 account objects into the database. Account 1 equal new account. Account constructor that takes account number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. Initial balance is 100. Account 2, account 3, account 2, account 3. And the balance is 500. Account 3 has balance 1000, and the account number. And then we call repo save all list of account 1, account 2, account 3, and we print sample database initialized. So we have 3 accounts in memory H2 database. We need to restart the application. Restart. Okay, you see the last line in the console sample database initialized. Okay, and test this API again. And you see now in the response, it shows the data is the JSON document that contains information of all accounts, 3 accounts. And to format the response, I use this syntax. You see, we have information of all accounts in the database: account ID 1, account number, balance. You see, account ID 2, account ID 3. And you can also use Postman program to test REST API. So this is Postman. So I create a new collection here. The collection name is test account APIs. Okay, and add a request get HTTP get and the request URL localhost port number 8080. Okay, and click send. You see, I got an error. The request URL should include /API/accounts. Click send. And you see, I got the data from the API that represents information of all accounts in the database. Here, account ID 1, 2, 3. So far, so good. And let me change the request name to list all accounts. Put it into the collection test account APIs. Save. So you can test REST APIs using curl or using Postman program. Next, let's code the second REST API for the second retrieve operation. Get the information of a specific account. The request URI or the API endpoint URI is /API/accounts/ the ID of the account. And the purpose of this API is to retrieve information of a specific account by ID. And the HTTP request method should be get. The response status code should be true or okay if the response contains data, or for not found if no account found with a given ID. And the response body is a JSON document that represents the requested account information. Here's a sample response of the REST API for the second retrieve operation. Get information of a single account. You see, it includes the information of the account such as ID, account number, and balance, plus some links that follow HATEOAS principle. But for now, we just code the initial code that returns the plain data of a specific account, ID, account number, and balance. And we will add the links later. So in Java code, we need to implement the second handler method in the account API class getOne method. It invokes the get method of the account service class to retrieve information of an account by ID, and the REST client calls this API via standard HTTP GET method, as you can see. Okay, so come back to our project and code the second API, the second handler method in the account API class here. The HTTP method is get mapping public account get one. and we need to specify the ID of the account in the request URI like this. This is a placeholder for account ID, and in the method parameter we need to use the path variable to bind the value of the ID in the URL in the URI with the argument of the method integer ID. And for now we just simply return service get ID. Okay, and now we can test this API for the first time. I want to get the information of the account ID 1. So type the command in curl command is curl localhost 8080 API slash account slash and account ID is 1. And you see it returns the data of the requested account ID 1, account number 123456789 balance 100. And let me test this in Postman. So I add the second request here. URL click send. You see, I got the data here, account ID 1. And let me change the account ID here. You see, it returns the data that presents the account ID 2, information of account ID 2 here. Account ID 3. You see. And let me save this request in Postman. Get one account. Okay. If I specify the account ID 5 here, it should return an error because no account exists with the given ID 5. You see, I got internal server error. So we need to update the code to return the HTTP status code 404 if no account file with the given ID. Okay, so we need to update the code here. It should return type response entity. And here we should catch this statement. Catch no shock element exception. Because you see, because the find by ID method returns an option of type T, which can throw no such element exception. Okay, and in case of exception, I return the status code is response entity not found, not built. And in case there's an account exists, we return new response entity. Account, and the status code is http status. Okay. Okay, and test this URL again. And you see, now I got the status code for not found. Let me test in command line ID 10 and use the -v option. And you see, I get the status code for not found. If I type ID 2, it should return data of the account ID 2. Here you see. Now let's understand the key information about HATEOAS. So what is HATEOAS? You know, HATEOAS stands for Hypermedia as the engine of application state. It is a constraint of the REST application architecture that makes web APIs actually RESTful. REST APIs that follow HATEOAS principle send not only data to the client but also possible actions related to that data in form of links. So from a base URI like /API/accounts, REST clients can follow the links included in the responses in order to navigate resources and perform actions without prior knowledge of links. So the most important advantage of HATEOAS is it helps decoupling client and server, as developers can evolve APIs without worrying about breaking existing clients, and provided that clients should make no assumption about resource URIs rather than the base one. And here's a sample data returned by the API/API/account/one. You see in the data besides the actual information such as ID, account number, and balance. It also includes some links here. Here are the links that follow HTOS principle with relations, self, deposits, withdrawals, collection. So REST clients can know the possible actions allowed related to the data, such as deposit an amount to the account, or withdraw an amount from account, or see the collection of all accounts. Make sense? And what are Spring HTOS and HAL? Spring HTOS provides some APIs that is the creation of hypermedia links in API responses or links in JSON documents. And Spring HTOS supports HAL or Hypertext Application Language. HAL is the standard which establishes conventions for expressing hypermedia controls such as links with JSON. By following HAL, you build REST APIs that can be consumed by any REST clients that understand HAL. Now let's use Spring HATEOAS API to add links to the data returned by the REST API for retrieve operation with one single account. Firstly, we add two links with the relations self and collection. The link with the relation self has the URL pointing to the API that returns the information of a single account, and the link with the relation collection has the URL pointing to the API endpoint URI that returns information of all accounts. You see. So come back to our project and to use Spring HTOS. Make sure that you have the dependency Spring Bootstrap HTOS here. You see, and then update the entity class account here to extend the representation model class. You see, import representation model class from this package or .spring framework.HTOS, and the generic type is account. And then in the API handler method get one here, after retrieving an account object here, we can add link like this account. Add the add method here comes from the base class representation model. You see. Okay, so we add the first link. Use the link to method. you need to have a static import like this. Import static arch.server framework .HATEOAS .server .mvc dot web mvc builder, and the static method link to, and then we also need to import the static method on. So we can use link to and method on here. Method on. Now we need to specify the controller class and the method from which Spring HATEOAS will use to build the URL for the link. Here we specify the class is account API dot class, and we specify the method is get1 and pass the ID account dot get ID. Okay, and then we specify the link relation with self-ref, indicating we use the self relation. Okay. We got an error here. We need to save the entity class. Okay. Now let's test the get1 account API in Postman here. I change the account ID here to ID1 and click send. And now you see in the data return, in the response, you can see we have object underscore links, and the first link with the relation self and the URL pointing to the API that returns the data of the account ID1. That's the meaning of the self relation link. You see, in command line you can test like this. You see the link with the self relation here and the URL here. Very easy, very convenient to use the Spring HATEOAS API for adding links to REST API, right? And next, let's add second link. Add second link that points to the API endpoint URI for the list or method here. So we got similar account add link to method on account API.class and specify the method to be used to generate the URL is list or, and then we specify the link or relation with rel. We can specify a string as the name for the link relation, like this collection. Okay. We got an error. Okay, and test again. And you see now we have the second link with the relation collection included in the data of a single account here. You see collection and the URL pointing to the API endpoint URI /API/accounts. So REST client can follow to get the information of all accounts. And let me test in Postman here. Change ID, account ID to ID3. Send. And you see the response data includes the link with a relation collection here. And it is recommended to use link relation constants from the interface YANA link relations instead of string like this. So I update the code like this. YANA link relations here. You can see this interface defines various standard link relations according to the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. You see. So I choose the constant collection here. Collection. Okay. And we get the same result. ID 3, ID 2. You see here. ID 3. You see. Okay, so you can see the code that you see is to bring HATEOAS API to add links to REST API is very simple like this. Next, let's use a Spring HATEOAS API to update the data returned by the REST API for retrieve operation list or accounts. We add a link with self or relation for the collection itself. You see the URL pointing to the collection itself here. And for each account information in the list, we add links with relation self and collection to each account in the list. So we update the handler method list over here. We change the return type of the method to use collection model. Response entity and collection model. List account. Firstly, we add the link with relation self to the collection itself. Firstly, we need to get a collection model of the list accounts here, and it returns a collection model, and we put the model into the response entity here. Okay, and then we add the link model, add a link to and method on, and the class is account API.class, and the method list or and the link or relation with self rel here. Response entity collection model account. Okay, so this is the update code of the API that returns information of all accounts. Okay, and let me test in command line. Call the API/accounts, and you see we have the link with relation self for the collection itself, for the account list here, the link self here, you see. And let me check in Postman. List all accounts here. You see the link for the collection itself here. Okay, and next we add links to each account in the list. So we use the for loop here for each account in list accounts. Then we call account add link, so we can copy the code here. Okay, you see. Okay, and test again. Okay, now you see in each account information in the list, we have two links with the relation self and collection. You see for account ID 1 and the links for account ID 2 and the links for account ID 3. Next, let's code the REST API for create operation. So the request URI for this API is /API/accounts. And the purpose of this API is to add new account information. The HTTP request method should be post, and in the request body, it should include a JSON document represents account information. And the response status code can be 201 created for successful creation. And the response body should include a JSON document that represents the newly added account. And here's a sample response from the data returned by the REST API for create operation. You see the status code 201 created, and note that in the response it should include a header with the name location, and then the value is the URL pointing to the get one account API, and then the data is a JSON document. Besides the values of account information such as ID, account number, and balance, we have some links here. Firstly, we add two links with the relation self and collection. Okay, come back to the project, and we add the next handler method to expose the next REST API for create operation. So we use the post mapping annotation here. Public response entity type is account add, and we use the annotation request body account to map the purpose of using request body annotation is to convert the JSON document in the request body to a Java object of type account here. Okay, and in the method we simply call service.save account, and it returns the saved account object. And from this saved account object we add two links, so we can copy the code here. Saved account. Okay, and then we return response entity. Return response entity. Created, and we need to build URI. Like this, use link to method and method on account API dot class. Method is get one. Saved account get ID. and to URI, and the second parameter is and then we specify the body. The body of the response is a JSON document, so we use body of save account. Okay, you see. Okay, and now let's test the create API in Postman. Okay, so I add new request here. Method is post and request URL is localhost 8080 accounts. Okay, let me change the request name to add an account. Okay, and to specify the JSON document that represents the account information, we use the body here, the raw, and choose the type is JSON, and we specify JSON document. Account number 987654321. Oh, and balance is 2,955. Okay, and click send. Oh, you see, I got the status for not found error. Sorry, the URI should be /API/accounts. Okay, click send. Okay, successful. And you see, I got the status 201 created, and the body of the response is a JSON document that represents the information of the newly added account here, account ID 4, number, balance, and we have two links with the relations self and collection. Perfect, right? Let me test the list accounts API again. Send. And now we have 4 accounts here, account ID 4, the newly added one here. Next, let's code the REST API for full update operation. The request URI is /API/accounts, and the purpose of this API is to update all information of an existing account. The HTTP request method should be put, and the request body must include a JSON document represents account information to be updated, and the response status code should be 200 OK for successful update operation, and the response body should include a JSON document that represents the newly updated account. And here's a sample response of the data returned by the REST API for full update operation. You see, besides the updated information of the account, such as ID, account number, and balance, it also includes some links. Firstly, we add the links with relations, self, and collection. Okay, come back to the project, and we implement the next API for full update operation. It should similar to the create operation, so we can reuse the code. Firstly, we need to use the put mapping annotation, and we reuse the code here. Okay, change the method name to replace, and we change the variable name here to updated account. And here we return new response entity with the data in the body is the updated account object, and then the HTTP status code is okay. Okay, very simple. And now let's test this full update API. So I create a new request here with the HTTP method is put for full update operation, and the URL save the request full update account. Okay, and in the body we need to specify a JSON document similar to add account here, but we need to specify ID of the account to be updated. ID field here. I want to update the account ID 1. Account ID 1. Account ID 1, you see account number. I want to update the account number like this. 3030 and balance update to 3000. Currently it is just 100. Okay, and click send. You see I got the status 200. Okay here, and the body of the response is the JSON document that represents the updated account information. You can see account ID 1, account number updated, balance updated, and we have two links with the relation self and collection here. Perfect, right? So far so good, and let me test the get one account API. Change the ID to account ID 1. And you see I see the information updated here. Account number, balance here for the account ID 1, and the links here. Next, let's code REST API for partial update operation. The request URI is /API/accounts and followed by ID of an existing account and /deposit. So the purpose of this partial update API is to deposit an amount to a specific account by ID, and the HTTP request method should be batch, and the request body must include JSON document represents amount information, and the response status code should be 200 OK for successful partial update operation, and the response body should include a JSON document of the newly updated account. The balance should be increased after a deposit. And here's the sample response of the data returned by the REST API for partial update operation, deposit an amount. You see, besides the updated information such as ID, account number, and balance, it includes the links self collection, and at this time we can add the third link to an account for deposit API with the corresponding URL. You see. Okay, so come back to our project and we code the next API with the patch mapping annotation. Public response entity account, response entity account deposit, and the parameter of the method should be an amount object. So we create a new simple Java class here, amount, and it has a single field, float amount. Very simple. Okay, you see class amount, and we use the request body annotation here, amount, and patch mapping. We need to specify the path parameter is the ID, and then deposit. Okay, let me check the URI. Okay, deposit. Okay, and then we call service uh, deposit amount, get amount, and then the ID. For the ID of undercount, we need to use the path variable here, ID, integer ID, and it returns the updated account information, updated account, and we can reuse the code here. Okay, very simple, right? Now let's test this API using Postman. So I create a new request here with the HTTP method is patch here, and the URL localhost API account ID. I want to deposit an amount to our account ID 1 API account ID 1 and deposit. Okay, and the body of the request is the JSON document that represents amount number here. I want to deposit 100, an amount of 100. Okay, so now let me see the account ID 1. We have the balance is 3000. Okay, let me save this request first. Deposit an amount to an account. Okay, click send. You see, I got the status 200 okay, meaning the partial update operation is successful. And you can see account ID 1, account number, and the balance is just 200. Oh, let me check. So I think it is not correct. We deposit 100. 200 here. Let me run this API again. Deposit 100. Okay, so you see it increased to 300 here. Okay, let me change the amount to 1200, and the result should be the balance 1500. You see 1500 here, correct? So far so good, right? And now we can add another link to the links collection here for the deposit operation. So here we add another link, updated account, add link to method on account API.class, and this time we specify the handler method is deposit. ID is ID of the account, updated account, get ID. And for the second parameter, we can pass null value. Okay. And then the duration is deposits. So we specify withdrawal is deposits here. Okay, you see. Okay, and test again. I want to update to deposit an amount to the account ID 2. Current reserve balance is at 50. Okay, ID 2 here, and I deposit 500. Okay, click send, and you see now it is updated the balance to 550, and now in the links I can see the new link deposit with the URL is for the deposit API, you see. So we will also update the links in other methods replaced here, add here, saved account, get one here, account, and list all here. Okay, so now let me test the APIs again. List all accounts, and you see now we have a new link for each account here. Deposit for account ID 1, deposit for account ID 2, deposit for account ID 3, and so on. And test at one account, deposit link here, test full update. You see deposit link here, test deposit an amount we already tested. Similarly, let's write code for the next REST API that is for partial update operation to withdraw an amount from an account. So the request URI is /API/accounts and then account ID and then /withdraw. The purpose of this API is to withdraw an amount from a specific account by ID, and the HTTP method of the request should be patched, and the request body should include a JSON document represents amount information, and the response status code should be 200 OK for successful partial update operation, and the response body should include a JSON document of the newly updated account. And here's a sample response of the data returned by the API, the REST API for a deposit operation. And this time we can add the link withdraws to the collection of links besides the data. Okay, so now we write similar code. So just copy, paste, and modify. Change the URL here to withdraw. And we change method here to withdraw. Okay, very simple. Now let me test using Postman. Add a new request, patch method, and copy the URL. Save the request. Withdraw an amount from an account. Okay, and in the body, specify the amount in JSON document. Amount. I want to withdraw 100 amount from the account ID 2. Let me check the account ID 2 has a balance. It has balance 50. So I withdraw 20. Okay, click send. You see I got the error method not allowed. Sorry, it should be a withdraw. Click send. Okay, I got the status 2 hour okay here and the data in the response. Here you see the balance got updated to just 30. Before that it is 50. It is 50 here, but after withdraw operation of 20 amount here, it is now only 30. So the logic is correct. Now let me test withdraw an amount from another account. Account ID 3 has the balance of 1,000, and now I want to withdraw 600 from account ID 3. Okay, send. Okay, now the balance is 400, correct, right? Okay, and next we add the next link for the deposit operation. Sorry, for the withdrawal operation. Withdraw, and the relation is withdraws. Okay, now let me update to withdraw only 100. And now in the data return, you can see now I have the link with the relation withdraws here, pointing to the withdraw API. And so we update the code for other APIs for the withdrawals link. Here you see updated account withdrawals, deposit, save account, and list all operation here, account. Okay, and then test a list all accounts here. Now in each account information you can see we have, sorry, now test again. Now in I don't see the link withdraw. Sorry, it should be withdraw at ID deposit. Sorry, I forgot to update the list all. You see that one, list all here. Okay, now I should see the new link. Okay, in each account I can see the links, self, deposits, withdrawals, and collection here. You see that is the complete HATEOAS links for the REST APIs. And we test that one. You see the link for deposit and withdrawals here. Next, let's code the final REST API for delete operation. The request URI is /API/accounts/ID of an account. The purpose of this API is to delete a specific account by ID, and the HTTP request method should be delete, and the response status code should be 204, no content for successful delete operation, or for not found if no account found with the given ID. Okay, come back to the project and we code the last API for delete operation here with the delete mapping annotation, and we specify the ID of the account in the request path here, public response entity delete path variable ID integer ID, and we call service dot delete ID, and then we return response entity no content bill. We update the code in the service here to throw an exception in case no account found with the given ID. Here we check if repo exists by ID, return false, then we throw an exception here, no check element exception, or we throw account not found exception, account not found exception. So we create this exception class. Create class account. The class name account not found exception. Finished. Okay. And add throw declaration for the method. Okay, and then in the API here we need to try catch here. In case of account not found exception, we should return the HTTP status for not found. Return response entity not found, not built. Okay, now let's test the API for delete account operation using a Postman here. So I add a new request with the method delete localhost 8080/API/accounts. I want to delete account ID 3. Account ID 3. Account ID 3 here. Save the request. Delete an account. And click send. You see I got the status 204 no content, meaning the delete operation was successful. If I click again, I should get for not found. You see I got the status for not found because no account found with the ID 3. Let me check account ID 3 here. No account ID 3 anymore. And let me check the API here. You see for not found. Alright, so far we have done coding, implementing all the REST APIs for Crud operations, create, retrieve, update, and delete with HATEOAS links. You see here, but you see we have some duplication code in each API here, the code that add links. You see here. So now I'd like to show you how to refactor the code to reduce the duplication, this kind of duplication code, because we are using Spring HATEOAS for adding links to REST API. Okay, so Let's create a new Java class here, new class, and we name the class as account model assembler. And we use the configuration annotation. So Spring Framework will inject an instance of this class. Okay, and we implement the representation model assembler interface. Representation model assembler interface, and specify the type is account, and then entity model account. Okay, and then we implement the method to model here, account, and here we create a new account model object, entity model of account, and it returns an account model object, account model, and then we add the link to the account model. So we copy the code here, copy this code that adds link to REST API, and we update account model, account here. Okay, and for now we don't have to extend the representation model in the account entity class, so delete. Okay, and then we update the account API class. We need to declare another field of type account model assembler here. This assembler equal assembler. Alright, and then we update each method. So for the get one method here, we simply call assembler to model for the given account object, and it returns entity model here. That's model. So we also need to update the signature of the method here, entity model. Entity model. Okay, you see. And to model account. We got an error here. Let me see. Sorry, I forgot to save the class account model assembler. Okay, and we do similar for other APIs. Get entity model from an account object, and we put the entity model here. Change the method signature return type here to response entity model account, and then we delete the duplicate code. Entity model here. Entity model here. Updated account. Just copy paste and modify. change the return type. Delete. Add an entity model from the updated account. Return entity model here. Okay. And finally, for the list O operation, here, we write the code a little bit different, like this. Okay, we need to list accounts stream, and we use a map function here, assembler to model, and collect us to list. Okay, and the rest of the code remains unchanged. Okay, make sense? Okay, now let's do a final test for the REST API's list all accounts sent. Okay, you see account ID 1. Add 1. By what? 200. Okay. I think something wrong. Let me check. Sorry. In the toModel method, I should return account model. Okay, and I think it should work now. That's the list all accounts. Okay, account ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, but we don't see any links. Return account model to API. Let me check the get1 API. In this API, it returns the data plus the links here: self deposit, withdrawals, collection. Let me test add account API. Okay, done, successful. Full update. Done, successful. Deposit. Done, successful. Withdraw from account. Let me see. Withdraw from account ID 1. Withdraw from account ID 1. Okay, it works correctly. And delete account ID 4. Delete account ID 4. 204, no content, successful. And we just need to fix the issues in the list or API. Sorry, this statement return a type of list entity model accounts. So we need to change the method signature here, and we should pass the accounts of type list entity model here. Collection model of accounts. We need to change the return type. Collection model here. Okay, and we also need to change collection model, entity model, account here. Okay. Okay, so this is the updated code for the RESTful API. Now test again. Okay, you see now in the data returned by the API for each account, it has the linked self-deposit withdrawal collection here for each account. Perfect, right? And you can update the code like this. You can use the two collection model method of the interface representation model assembler. Here you see it implements the default method to collection model here. So we can use in our API here assembler to collection model list accounts. It returns the collection model. So we can delete this verbose code collection model. Okay, so the code looks much simpler, right? And now we can test again the list or API send. You see, it is working perfectly. And that's my tutorial for Spring Boot REST API Crud operations with HATEOAS. I hope you found this video helpful. Please subscribe to my channel, like, comment, and share this video. Thanks for watching.